Right now, we're less than 3 weeks away from the end of this year's legislative session, and state and local leaders are pushing for lawmakers to pass critical bills that will change how the state funds education through its ECS funding formula. Thank you so much for staying with us at 5:30. I'm Annette Montgomery.
And I'm Tim Lammers. Now, this is all coming as they say the current funding formulas are outdated. And without a change, they said it will place an unnecessary strain on both public schools and local taxpayers. Fox 61's Erin Coogan's at the state capitol. She's got more on what they're asking for.
Well, for 13 years now, the state's funding formula to determine how much money a school district gets per student enrolled in classes has remained the same. But with operating costs higher than ever, lawmakers are saying now is the time to make the change.
You know what else hasn't changed since 2013? Nothing. Nothing. Everything else has gone up in cost.
New Haven Mayor Justin Elliker among the nearly 24 state and local lawmakers addressing what they described as critical funding gaps in our state's public school system.
It isn't just a few cities and towns that are articulating that we are in dire fiscal straits. It's many of us.
Currently, while Connecticut remains one of the leading states in per capita funding in the classroom, lawmakers say the reality is the majority of that money comes from individual municipalities rather than the state.
But what we don't talk about is we're in the bottom 10 and the proportional share that the state spends on that per pupil education funding.
And with higher overhead costs and greater demands as to what public schools are expected to provide, the funding gap is growing. In part, they say it's because state funding remains reliant on the outdated formula of the Education Cost Sharing Grant, last updated in 2013. So what's at stake? Some education advocates say forced cuts to school programming and higher property taxes.
When state aid doesn't keep pace, the gap lands on local taxpayers and higher property taxes, and on our kids in the form of eliminated programs, services, and extracurriculars, the very things that they rely on.
Meanwhile, other lawmakers say time remains of the essence to come up with any kind of solution, both in the short and long term, with just 2.5 weeks left in the legislative session. Differing opinions and ideas, however, across the aisle threaten no progress at all.
I don't think we can change the formula. And in the meantime, what we have to do is stop the bleeding. We have to triage this. We have to get funding to the towns to assist them, to alleviate that pressure.
To me, for anybody who thinks it's unreasonable to do the policy this session, I really don't understand that. Policy is policy. Fix the policy.
Additional varying proposals to help close the gap in the interim of actual policy change also require consideration in the remaining days of session. Last week, Governor Ned Lamont announced his support of a $100 million distribution of funds for the upcoming school year, while Democrats deemed that not enough to make a dent, and Republicans also forged a separate ambitious proposal of more than $365 million. But again, with just 2.5 weeks left in the legislative session, time is of the essence if we want to see any substantial change ahead of next year. In Hartford, Erin Coogan, Fox 61.